Every NFL team is currently in the process of deciphering their future of their franchise. But today, I thought I'd do something a little bit different and grade every single team on whether or not I think they have a bright future or a non-hopeful future. So as you guys can see, I decided to put together a nice little tier list for every single team. On the very bottom, we have every single NFL team, and we have 6 different categories we're going to be using. The number 1 category is going to be the future contenders category. Pretty self-explanatory. These are teams who I think within the next 5 to 10 years will continuously be championship contenders. Then we have future playoff teams. These are teams that maybe have already made the playoffs or are eventually going to get to that spot. Then we have the decent future category. These are teams that don't necessarily have bad futures, but also don't have bright futures, but regardless, they're kind of in the middle of the pack. Concerning future is a category that entails that the team is going down the wrong path. That's just a personal opinion for myself, and as it is for every single category. Next up, we have the scary future category. These are for teams that I think are just trending in the wrong direction. And of course, the no hope category is pretty self-explanatory. These are teams that just quite frankly have no hope. So the way we're going to be doing this is by grading the team's future for not only this upcoming year, but for about the next 3 years. So we're going to be looking at this from a time span of this upcoming season to about 3 to 4 years from now. So for example, a team like the Miami Dolphins, we have to think about them today, tomorrow, and within the next 3 to 4 years. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to begin with the said Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are in a bit of a tricky situation. They have the Tua contract going on, the Mike McDaniel situation, a whole lot of stuff going on with the franchise, and as a whole, their contract situation just sucks. Now, could that be fixed? 1000%, and I do think in some way it will be fixed. With that being said, I don't think this team is necessarily a future contender, but I do think they're a team that will continuously make the playoffs and maybe someday could be that contending team. We will put them in the future playoff team category. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens have a lot to be excited about. Lamar Jackson played like an MVP, the defense played fantastic, the team as a whole looks like they're heading in the right direction. I think for the most part, yes, they have some concerns when it comes to playoff time and whether or not they can get over the hump, but I do think when it comes to being a contender, I think the Ravens are within that category, so we will put the Ravens in the future contenders category. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot to be excited for Cincinnati. T. Higgins looks like he will be staying. The defense should hopefully get better. And as a whole, the offense hopefully can take the next step with a healthy Joe Burrow, healthy Jamar Chase, healthy just overall roster. So I think as a whole, because this team's already made it to the Super Bowl and has already shown the ability to continue to contend, I think it would be a little ridiculous for me not to say that they are not a future contender. So we're going to put them in the future contenders category. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos, and unfortunately for the Denver Broncos, there's not a lot of things going well for them at this moment. As it sits right now, they have a bunch of questions regarding their quarterback position, which of course is the most important spot. Now the good news is they seem to have their head coaching spot filled, as well as a couple of players here and there. So I don't think this team necessarily has no hope at all, but I do think this team is looking a little bit downward. For now, I'm going to put them in the scary future category unless we get some answers at that quarterback position. Next up, we have the New York Football Giants, one of the most popular teams in the NFL. This team seemingly not this last year, but the most recent year to last year, was thought to be a team that had a ton of momentum going in the right direction. And then last year happened. Daniel Jones got injured, the offensive line still sucked, the receiving room still sucked, and the defense took a step back as a whole. Now, you could put that blame on a lot of different places, but I don't think Brian Dibble is the entire person to blame here. So while I am concerned for their future, I don't think everything is just bad right now, so I don't think they're in that no-hope category, but I do think they are in the scary future category. Too many questions that they have to answer, and I just have a lot of concerns for this team. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings. I think this honestly is kind of a tough one to say right now because, well, we haven't got the answer as to who the quarterback will be. I think if it's Kirk Cousins, I think you can gladly put this team in the decent future category, but I think regardless of the quarterback situation, they're going to either go Kirk Cousins, who's a great quarterback, or some sort of young player, whether they decide to trade up or just draft one. So I think as a whole, I like to think this team has a decent future. Will they be a playoff team here and there? 1000%. They have all the pieces, but until they answer the quarterback position and, of course, the Justin Jefferson contract, I do have some concerns, but I'm not necessarily concerned. So I'll put them in the decent future category. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Rams. A lot to take from last year. Unfortunately for the LA Rams, I don't know what their future looks like past Matthew Stafford. Now, what I will say is this most recent draft with Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, and several studs on the defensive side of things who are young, I do think their future outlook is looking a lot brighter than what people might think. When people think of the Rams, they think of a team that's going to win now. And while they can, they also have the ability to win 3, even 4 years from now because of their young talent. So I do think moving forward, I like where they're sitting at. I don't know if they're necessarily contenders, but I do think that they are a future playoff team. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a lot of what I said about the Rams is different about the Buccaneers. The Rams are a young team, whereas the Buccaneers have a lot of older players. Now, they do have a nice influx of young talent, and some of the older guys will be leaving this offseason and within the next couple off seasons. But I do have some general concerns about the overall direction of this roster. Do I like the idea of keeping Baker Mayfield? Yes, I think he deserves it, and I'm not afraid to give him a decent-sized contract. But what I am saying is I don't know if this team will ever be a contending team, and I think they'll probably be in and out of the playoffs every single year unless they can kind of get general direction with their franchise. So for now, I'm going to put them in the decent future category. I'm not terribly concerned about their future, but I don't necessarily think they're within a playoff or contending spot quite yet. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions. I don't really think I have to explain this one that much. They have so much going for them. Quarterback's looking good, receivers looking good, offensive line is spectacular. Defense has its problems, but I think it will get fixed in some ways this offseason and within the next couple offseasons. I think the defense is more of a project rather than just a one-year thing. I think it's going to take a few years till they get that fully figured out. So for now, I will put them in the future contenders category, but they're in a nice spot. Chicago Bears. I think a lot of people need to realize the Bears have a nice roster they're low-key building. With the number 1 overall pick and I believe the number 9 overall pick in this year's draft, they're going to get 2 top 10 players and they're going to be able to add a lot of great talent to a team that's already going in the right direction. Now, do I think this team is a contender for a championship? No. Until I see Caleb Williams actually play, I don't know if I could put them even in the playoff spot quite yet. But what I am saying is I think this team has a decent future moving forward. Now, they're one of the weird teams where it's like I wish I had a category that said great future because I'm excited for their future, but I don't think I can quite put them in that playoff category quite yet until I see Caleb Williams, Drake May play. Now, if they keep Justin Fields, I like the spot plenty, but we'll just have to wait to see on how the young rookie quarterback, if they decide to go that route, does play. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think I have to explain this one that much. They're going to be continuous contenders for the next 3 to even 4 years. It all depends on how they decide to build around Brock Purdy, but with the foundation that's already been set, there's already so much to like. So San Francisco's heading in the right direction, even if they've already established themselves to be a very good team. They're going to continue to contend moving forward. They're a future contender. Philadelphia, one of the more tough teams. If you checked out one of my most recent videos, I talked about how the Philadelphia Eagles kind of have a concerning future. Now, concerning future is a little bit of a weird thing to say because for the Eagles, I think there's an easy path for them to be a future contender. They have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, several stars on offense and defense. With that being said, I don't like the coaching hires and I don't love the secondary and the linebackers group in totality. Not to mention, several players are going to be leaving like Jason Kelce. So I think as a whole, I want to put this team as a future playoff team and a future contender, but I got to be honest with you, I got to stick my ground here. I'm going to have to put them in concerning future. Now, this is just for this upcoming offseason. I do think as time passes on, I could be proven otherwise, and this team could easily move up into that future playoff or future championship contending category as early as like week 1. But until I see it with my own eyes, I just do not believe in Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. So I have to stick with my point here, and I'm going to put them in the concerning future just because I don't love the direction they're going down. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I'm going to try to keep my personal bias out of this one. If you don't know, I am a Raiders, Cowboys, NFL fan. But first things first, I'm an NFL fan. The Raiders have a lot of things going for them, and I think we need to look at that a little bit more seriously. I love the hire of Antonio Pierce. I don't really love the offensive coordinator they decided to bring in, but I'm also okay with it. I like the direction they're going with. They have a good offensive line, some good weapons to pass around with. You need a quarterback. I love Jaden Daniels. From rumors that have been swirling around, they might be getting Jaden Daniels. Defense is heading in the right direction. I would love to see a new corner come in to kind of establish a cornerback 1. But as a whole, the outlook for Raiders looks pretty decent. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff team next year or even a contender within the next 2 years, but I think the direction they're going with and the fact they have a direction in general puts them in a decent future category. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. A lot of hype about this Packers team after this last year. Jordan Love really opened things up about what their future could be after they defeated the Dallas Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs and then looked pretty damn good against San Francisco. Now, while I think Green Bay Packers fans are going to want me to put them in a future contenders category, I just cannot put myself quite yet there. And the reason why I say that is They have a lot going for them, but they have some offensive line issues. They're going to have a problem with who's the true receiver one. The defense needs a lot of overhauling, especially within the coaching staff, which fortunately they did fire Joe Barry. I am slightly concerned about Green Bay in that sense, but I'm not concerned about them missing the playoffs. I think they'll continue to make the playoffs and maybe at some point contend within the next couple years. But for now, I'm going to put them in a future playoff team category with the chance of moving forward pretty soon. Next up, we have the New Orleans Saints. Being negative however many $1 million they are in the cap space is definitely a bad outlook. I'll be honest with you, I don't see this team being a even decent team within the next couple of years. I don't hate Derek Carr being their future quarterback, but I also don't love the roster they're building. Part of me wants to put them in the concerning future or scary future category, but I'll be honest with you, I don't see the direction they're going with here. I don't love Dennis Allen. I don't love Derek Carr. I love Chris Olave, and I love some of their pieces like Brian Bresee, but I just don't see the general future for this team being that great. I don't see the direction they're going down, and like I said, I wish I could move them up, but with the direction they're going with and with everything that's going down right now, I just haven't really felt any sort of sense of energy that they're going to be a better team next year. So for now, I got to put them in the no hope category. Next up is the Washington Commanders. Getting rid of Ron Rivera definitely does help this team, but they're one of those weird teams where it's hard to kind of put them in any category right now. Like, they haven't done anything, so I can't put them in decent future or anything above it because they're still a bad team. They haven't done anything quite yet, but assuming they get Drake May and assuming they fix some of their problems, I like the general outlook for this team moving forward. It does appear like they have a general direction. So I'm going to put them in the concerning future category. I can't quite put them in the decent future category with nothing done yet. They haven't made any moves to get a quarterback, which isn't their fault, obviously. It's the start of the offseason, so maybe we'll do a part 2, and at some point their future might be a little bit brighter. Concerning future category, they'll move up as time goes on. Next up is the Arizona Cardinals. I've been very vocal about how I feel about this Cardinals team. I love the general direction they're going with. I think Kyler Murray's a good quarterback. I like their head coach. I can't put them anywhere above decent future, however, because similar to the Washington Commanders, there hasn't been enough done to make me think they're a good team or a playoff team moving forward. I got to wait to see what happens in this year's draft and free agency and all this and that. Washington, Arizona will have space to make plenty of moves in free agency, so depending on what they do, this video might be invalid within a couple weeks, which is fine. I'll make a part 2. I can milk this thing out a little bit. Arizona has a lot to look forward to. I love the fact they have 2 first-round picks to go along with multiple third-round picks as well. A ton of cap space, tons of things they can do, tons of problems. I like the future they're going down. Washington Commanders fans, don't be mad at me that I put Arizona above you guys. At least Arizona has their franchise quarterback right now. Pittsburgh's a tough team to really go down because they have the roster, but they don't have the quarterback. And with the general direction that they're going with, moving or keeping Kenny Pickett and deciding to try to get a veteran to compete with him, which rumors are circulating that it's Ryan Tannehill. If that's actually the case, then I'm sorry, I gotta put you in the scary future category. But I'm gonna assume the best here, assuming that they have a good draft, they go out in free agency and do the right moves. I'll put them in concerning future for now. This is a team where it's like, I can definitely see the direction they're going down, but I just don't like Kenny Pickett as the quarterback. I don't see the direction of him being the future starter. So until they address that quarterback spot, I can't put them in anywhere above that. I think they will make the playoffs. Like, they're one of those teams that continue to make the playoffs because of their head coach, but they're always going to lose. They're always going to lose. So until I get that answer of who's going to be the quarterback, I just can't really do anything about that. Next up, Buffalo. With Josh Allen at the quarterback position, they're always going to have a chance. Now, I don't know if this team will ever be able to take that next step to become a contender, but with Josh Allen, all the pieces they have, I just can't put them anywhere above future contenders category. They may not ever win a championship, but they'll always be considered one of the favorites to win it. So for now, future contenders category to Buffalo, I think that's a pretty fair spot for them. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. A lot to like about Atlanta. They have a future quarterback coming in. Hopefully it's Jaden Daniels or Drake May. The roster's already very good. Defense could still use some work, especially with the pass rusher, but they have all the things you'd want to get those problems fixed. I don't see a world where this team misses the playoffs next year, and I think moving forward, they're going to move into that contenders category within the next couple years. We're going to put them in future playoff team category. Seattle Seahawks, I love the Mike Macdonald hire. I think there's a lot of good things going on with Seattle. They have a lot of good pieces. I do have some concerns generally about Geno Smith as their future quarterback and just the overall direction of the roster, but they're going to continue to be a good team with a chance to continue to compete for playoff spots. I'll put them in the decent future category because I like Mike Macdonald, and I'm not generally concerned about their future. I think there's a lot to look forward to. New England Patriots are a bit similar to the Washington Commanders. A lot to like about what their future could be, but nothing's happened yet, and it's hard to really put a direction yet without knowing what they're going to do. Recent rumors have said that they may trade their first round pick, which I don't love, but I can't move them anywhere else but right next to the Washington Commanders. We just have to sort of wait to see on what they do in this year's draft and whether or not they decide to trade it, keep it, or do whatever with it. Cleveland Browns, I love where the Cleveland Browns are going this past year, but I just don't really see the general outlook for this team moving forward. They're always going to have a chance to compete for the division, but until Deshaun Watson shows me that he can be a true playoff leading quarterback, I just can't put him anywhere but concerning future. I love Myles Garrett. I love the defense. I love some pieces on the offense, especially along the offensive line, when healthy. But until I can see it in fruition with my own eyes, I can't really speculate on what their future will be. Do I think this team will make the playoffs next year? Probably. Do I think they'll make the playoffs 2 years from now? Yes. But I don't see them going up at this point. I kind of see their team falling down a little bit. I think this was maybe their peak, and we'll just have to wait to see on them. Next up is the Houston Texans. I don't think I have to explain too much about this one. Packers fans are probably going to get on to me about how that the Packers and the Houston Texans should be on the same level. They're just not. The Houston Texans have so much more wiggle room to make their roster better. They're going to have a late first round pick this year that I think they're going to do some really good things with. Houston's in a spot now where they can continue to contend for playoffs while low-key building to become a championship team at some point. They're future contenders, and it's crazy to think that last year they probably would have been in scary future or concerning future, but now they're future contenders. It's crazy. Kansas City, again, they just won a championship. They have Patrick Mahomes, they have Kelsey, they have everything you'd ever want. Yes, I'm concerned about Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed leaving, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, you're always going to be a contender. The Dallas Cowboys, this is one of the hardest teams to really locate on this board because, in a sense, I think they'll continue to compete in the playoffs, and I don't know if they're necessarily going up or going down. It's one of those weird things because they've been kind of a bit stagnant with being 12-5, losing in the playoffs, and long term, I kind of don't really see much change happening. Do I think this team could potentially make a deep run in the playoffs and maybe make a Super Bowl at some point? Yes, I could definitely see it, but it's hard to really go out there and say that they're not concerning or scary. And Philadelphia Eagles fans are going to kill me for this because I'm considering putting Dallas in decent future, but I got to stick with my guns here. I'm going to have to put Dallas the concerning future category with the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. I think of these three teams right here, the team I'm most confident in that will move forward would be the Dallas Cowboys. You know, you have MVP level quarterback like Dak Prescott. You have offensive player of the year like CeeDee Lamb, defensive player of the year like Micah Parsons, some new coaches coming in. I'm excited to see what they do. But you can also make the same case about Philadelphia. You have former MVP candidate Jalen Hurts. AJ Brown is an offensive player of the year like player. Defensively, you have so many great players. So I want to put them higher, but I got to be modest here. LA Chargers, I think the Jim Harbaugh thing really put a nice band-aid over a lot of their issues. And while I think their future is going to be very bright, I also can't sit here and say that they don't have a ton of issues. Negative, I think, $40 million in cap space. Granted, that probably has changed now due to the recent cap influctuation. They have Justin Herbert. They have a lot of things going for them, but they also have a lot of holes they have to look to address. And with the style of football that Jim Harbaugh likes to play, I don't really know if they have the roster right now to really work around him. So if we're talking 5-6 years from now, I think this team will be pretty damn good. But when it comes to these next 3 years, I got to put them in scary future category. I think of all the teams I'm talking about, this one could potentially be the most controversial because of the fact that people love Jim Harbaugh and people think he's a good fit for the LA Chargers, and I also do. That being said, they have a lot of freaking work to do to get to the point where I think they can become playoff contenders. The New York Jets, they are maybe the hardest team on this board to put in a range because good defense, some young offensive players like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but bad offensive line, and quarterback is 40-something years old with no real plan as to who is going to be his successor. So, assuming they get a quarterback at some point, whether it's this offseason or next offseason, which I'm going to make the assumption because there's no way in hell they don't get a successor to him at some point, I'm going to put this team as a future playoff team. With the defense they have, they've already proven to be one of the better units in the NFL. I think there's a lot of things going in the right direction down there in New York. However, I am concerned a lot about the general direction of this team, given the fact they have an older quarterback with a horrible offensive line. Hopefully this offseason they can sort of ease my mind with a lot of these concerns I do have. Carolina is a team that a lot of put in no hope, but I refuse to do that. Carolina has a lot of things going for them, JC Horn is a good player, one healthy. Brian Burns, good player. Bryce Young, good player. I like Dave Canales. I think that's a good hire. That being said, the overall roster as a whole is very scary. Now, if you checked out my most recent video, I think I have a bit of a plan as to how they could fix that, but that's an extremely fictional and very unlikely way it's going to go down. So I can't move this team any higher than scary future. I would put them in no hope, but with Bryce Young and Dave Canales, there's a level of hope for this franchise, but I can't move them any higher. And real quick, I'm going to make a quick adjustment to our list here. I'm going to move the Denver Broncos down to no hope. I think within the next 2 to 3 years, their likelihood of them making the playoffs is extremely unlikely unless Russell Wilson does return and somehow work with the Sean Payton system. So I have to be a bit more critical of them. I kind of feel like with the teams they're in the list with, I have to move them down. Sorry, Broncos fans. Tennessee Titans. For some reason, a lot of Titans fans follow my channel, which, hi Titans fans, welcome. A lot of things to like about the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis is good. DeAndre Hopkins is still there. Derrick Henry's leaving, but the memories are still there. The offensive line and defense has some really good attributes. That being said, I don't love the Brian Callahan hire. I don't love a lot of the stuff they decided to do recently. In fact, I'm somebody who really thinks that Mike Vrabel should have kept the job. I know, controversial. That being said, with Will Levis and a lot of good things going forward for them, I think this team does have a relatively bright future. I don't know if I want to put them in decent future or concerning future. So I wish I could put them like right in the middle. We're going to put them in the back end of the decent future category. I think that they're like a tweener between these two, where it's like, I'm not concerned, but I'm also not sure they have a decent future. It's just, I'm a little bit like, it all depends on how Will Levis performs. So assuming the best and Will Levis turns into a good quarterback, or at least a consistently good quarterback, I'll put him in decent future for now. Indianapolis, I personally think Indianapolis is a very good team. I think that they are built to be very good for the next multiple years. They have a good head coach, good quarterback, good personnel. Bring back Michael Pittman Jr., and I think they're fine. I think this team will make the playoffs continuously, and I'm very excited for the future. I love Anthony Richardson, and I think he's a great quarterback. And lastly, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Had you asked me this question at the beginning of the season, I would have probably put them in the future playoff teams to even contenders category. I still think this team generally has a decent future. Now, I don't want to sit here and say they're in the no hope, or they're in the scary future hope, or even in the concerning future hope. I think this team, for the most part, has some good things going for them, but I do have a ton of concerns. Probably the biggest concern I have is the simple fact that Tennessee, Houston, and Indianapolis are in the same division with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they all took a huge leap forward, whereas the Jacksonville Jaguars took a step back. Does that mean that Jacksonville will never make the playoffs again? No. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if within 3 to 4 years, all 4 of these teams are consistent playoff to even championship contenders. But with the general direction of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I do have some level of concern. For now, I'll put them in decent future category with the possibility of at some point becoming a playoff contender. So this is my tier list breakdown. Again, the no hope category has the Broncos and the Saints, and you guys can read the rest here. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comment section below. Again, this was a list that is designed to tell you the future within the next 2 to 3 years. So if you guys do agree, let me know, and if you disagree, let me know. With that being said, I love you guys. Peace.